Welcome to the new school year. My name is Janet Gorton, and I'm the director of the English Learner Program. I want to take a few minutes to share with you information that will help you serve your English learner students and their families. We recognize that communication with parents is essential to the educational process for all students in Norman Public Schools. We are committed to making every reasonable effort to provide language services and supports in order to communicate with parents who possess limited English proficiency. Sometimes we are able to facilitate a meeting using an interpreter. The role of that interpreter is to serve as a neutral conduit who literally shares in the target language what has been stated in English. They can then interpret back into English questions that are asked by parents for the school staff to answer. If you know you have an upcoming meeting, there's a form you can fill out to request an interpreter. I'm going to quickly show you how to access it. On the NPS webpage, go to menu and then sign into the staff portal. There you can find the interpreter request link. This takes you to a Google form where you can enter the details of your request. My office will do our best to find someone to help facilitate the meeting. If we're unable to arrange for an interpreter, or if you have an emergency, there's also a phone interpreter service that is available 24/7 in hundreds of languages. If you will ask your principal, office staff, or EL staff, they can provide you with contact information and instructions. The service is called Propio. It can also be used if you have an emergency or need to make a quick phone call home to parents. Very, very useful. When you're meeting with a family and have an in-person interpreter, it's important that you speak to the parents as the audience. So rather than saying something like, tell them that, just direct your comments to the family and the interpreter will share your words in the target language. It's also important to pause frequently so you give the interpreter a chance to share the information in small chunks. Another helpful tip is to use simple documents in your explanations and to basically speak in bullet points. The whole point of the conversation is to make sure parents receive accurate information in a way that they can understand it. So short and simple is always better to help with communication. A great tool for using written translation is to use Google Docs. So I'm going to show you an example here. If you have a Google Doc, you go to Tools and go down to Translate Document. You'll be asked to rename the document, and I usually just add in the language that I'm translating into. Choose your language. I'm going to select Spanish since that's our most used one. Obviously, there are lots of languages that you can choose from. And click Translate. Now your document will be translated into your selected language. It is not perfect, but it will certainly help facilitate communication. You can also copy and paste text from another website and put it in a blank to Google Doc and use this same procedure to translate that text. Occasionally, if you have a document that has like a street name in it, the program may translate that street name. I always scan my document, and if I find something like this, like here's a platform name, Elevation, I would take that, since it's actually a proper name, I would take that and put it back manually into the original English. So you would scan your document and do the same thing in case something is translated that it really makes no sense to translate. In Infinite Campus, at the top of a student's demographic page, you may see some various symbols. One of them is this Family Needs Language Assistance symbol. Gives you an idea that there may be some communication needs if you reach out to a family. Unfortunately, in Infinite Campus, like if you hover over that, it will not tell you the language, but there's another screen you can find that, or at some point you will know what your student's native language is in the household. This just gives you an idea that I may need some assistance when I contact home. So what happens at the beginning of the year in the English Learner Program? It all starts with the home language survey. It's a form that's built out of questions that are embedded in the online registration process. There are 3 questions that are asked about language background and current language use. And if any one of those questions has a response with a language other than English, we are required to screen the student with an improved assessment within the first 30 calendar days at the beginning of the year. Later in the year, we only have 14 days to complete the process of screening to see if the student meets the state established criteria for being an English learner. We also must notify the parent during that time frame and share what supports will be put in place to support the student academically and in their English language development. EL staff are also required to develop an English language academic plan, or ELAP, for each EL student. This is similar to an IEP. It includes classroom modifications, testing accommodations, and learning goals. It also contains the most recent data from the student's English language proficiency assessment and can provide both where their proficiency is currently and how we want it to grow. If you have an EL in your classroom, you have access to all of this information through your Elevation dashboard, which I'll mention again in a moment. And all of these processes are dictated by federal and state law. So language and content expectations are closely related. And as grade level learning goals become more complex, or as a student goes up in grade level, each student is going to need more and more supports in some cases, and training to clear the hurdles. Example, if we have a student who enrolls as an 8th grader with limited English proficiency, there are probably going to be greater gaps for them between content and English language than, let's say, a 1st grader who enrolls. That upper level student is going to need more robust supports in order to engage in the content, as opposed to the student in a lower grade level. But the great news is there are so many instructional tools that you already use on a regular basis that are perfect for English learners. Here are some of the most critical with the highest impact. Modeling. Modeling shows students what they need to do, gives them a concrete expectation for the end product. Anytime we can add visual representations that go with our words, it just gives them more confidence in knowing what they need to do. Repetitive language is critical for students to acquire vocabulary and build them up to the point where they can use it in production, whether orally or in writing. So the more often we can use the academic language we need them to learn, the better. We want to give clear directions, both orally and in writing. It's difficult for students to process directions immediately, especially if they're just spoken. Having written directions as a reference guide gives students a chance to understand them, look up words, review them later, reflect on what they need to do, ask clarifying questions, but they need something very concrete to refer to later on. Graphic organizers and visual aids are things that we all use all the time. Perfect supports for students, especially our English learners, because it gives them something concrete to add to the language that's being used. Sentence starters are one of my favorite things. Sometimes we ask students questions and expect them to pull words literally from the air in response. But if we provide them with a starting point, they can complete thoughts they may have, because the sentence starter acts as a catalyst. It can be a simple thing like, I think that, it seems to me, I wonder if, I don't understand, the text tells me. Those things are just a spark to to the thoughts that maybe are in their head, and may help them be able to express them more easily. It's also okay to let English learners use their native language at first, get their ideas and thoughts out of their head onto paper, for example. Gives them an idea to put down what they understand, and then give them time to put that into English. It may be more simplistic because they have to use the vocabulary and structures that they know, but it may help them be able to express themselves and at least get the things out of their brain out into the open. And we cannot forget the critical importance of explicit vocabulary instruction for all students. Vocabulary is the key to content. If you don't understand words, you certainly can't understand the meaning of a content lesson. So again, the great news is These strategies are things that you use all the time. I just wanted to validate that they are truly best instructional practices for all students and especially for our English learners. When we award grades to EL students, our end goal is that they receive the grade that they earn in the content area, provided that appropriate and necessary modifications have been offered. Modifications also are not just limited to how content is delivered through the visual organizers, through sentence starters. It's not just that piece. It's also by how we offer students the opportunity to demonstrate learning. For example, you may read a story. An English learner may not have the vocabulary to retell the story to you, but perhaps they can draw a series of pictures to show that they understand what happened. That's just an example. For some of our English learners, especially our newcomers, it may be beneficial for them to be on an SU grading system. This is determined on an individual basis and is at the discretion of the EL teacher. If we put a student on SU, it is not necessarily across the board. It may be that they need an SU in social studies because it's a very language dependent content area, but perhaps the student is really strong in math and they don't need that SU support in their grading. By giving them an SU opportunity, it gives an English learner the opportunity to grow and develop their English proficiency without being stressed or have the worry of being penalized. And we try to keep this to a minimum and move them away from an SU grading system to standard grading over time. I mentioned Elevation earlier. This is the platform where all of our EL data is housed. By law, once an English learner meets the exit criteria for Oklahoma, we have to monitor their classroom progress for 4 academic years. 3 times a year, forms are sent out. We ask that you fill them out so that we can keep track of how these students are doing in the classroom. If you get an email from Elevation, don't delete it. Elevation is also where you can access a dashboard for each student and gain a better understanding of where they are linguistically and how you can support them in the classroom. If you ever have questions about Elevation, have difficulty logging in or something like that, please reach out to your site EL specialist and we will work on getting you the access and information that you need. The last item I'm going to mention is the EL Handbook for Teachers that you can find on the staff portal that I referenced earlier. This document contains a wealth of information, including what I've shared today with additional resources. These are some of the sections that are probably the most beneficial to start the year. For any questions that you have regarding an English learner, please reach out to your site EL teacher. These specialists are your best resource. They can offer knowledge regarding supports for the classroom, but also they can provide background information about a student so that you better understand where they have been, where they are now, and where we want them to go. Thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you a wonderful start to the school year.